Good
Hello.
evening, everyone. Welcome to episode number 43 of Restitching the Tapestry. We are inching our way closer to 50. We're getting pretty excited about that. We have some exciting things up and coming, of course. So we've just been, chatting and catching up in the background here. So let's talk a little bit about how our week has been going for us. Ari, how has your week been going?
Well, I made some tarot cards and
Uh,
oh, hang on, let me silence that. Um, I made some tarot cards and not that one. And I went for walks and I was getting some exercise in, and I did some journaling and I did some writing and some poetry writing. Yeah.
Woo.
And yeah, I had a good week. Just a very relaxing week. Enjoying the summer, enjoying the summer rain. It's been raining
Mm.
here lately, and I'm pluviophile, so I am just soaking it up.
Same here. I'm literally a human plant. Like I need the rain. My week it's been hectic on the work front, but it's getting a little bit better. Probably the strangest thing I had to do this week. I don't know why this just popped in my head, but I need to mention it. I had the exciting opportunity to clean my house's gutters.
You clean the gutters?
Yeah, because the prior tenant that lived here did not for 4 years. There was a day I came home after it rained and I looked at our gutters and there were trees in them sprouting.
Oh
There were trees growing from my gutters, and I was just like, what the hell? I was like, this has get no, like, mm-mm. So I like went to the store and I was like, well, we need to buy a ladder so we can do this. So like I did that and then used like a little digging tool to get it. It was disgusting. Like it was really gross.
no. So adult of you.
I know, like it was super adult and super straight. Like it was woo.
You did it.
Woo. All I needed was a tool belt and it would have completed the fashion ensemble, but
I'm so proud of you.
oh, thank you. But beyond that, I've been kind of just like mentally preparing for, I mean, this semester for me is about to end, like this short semester. So throughout July and August, I'm going to be working on some creative stuff. I've been really trying to like do a little bit more on YouTube lately, as you probably have noticed.
Yeah, I
Um,
saw that.
yeah, I've been trying to be a little bit more active because there was like a month. I mean, aside from doing our streams where like I just didn't do any videos at all. So I was just like, Donnie, you need to.
I know. I've been so inactive on YouTube. I've been trying to. I showed off my cards yesterday, and I'm starting to watch a movie, Ginger Snaps 2, and I'm gonna make a video about it
For
um,
Monster Movie Monday.
for Monster Movie Monday. Yeah, but I don't know if it's gonna end up being on Monday. But yeah, um,
It'll happen regardless, right?
yeah.
Leo, it seems we went right to the gutter with this live stream. Punny. Okay, so before we get to talking about tonight's topic, which is anti-intellectualism, I do want to make sure that we go through our mission statement as we always do. Many witness different atrocities, large or small, that fray the social fabric around us, and much of the time, many may feel powerless and know not how to address it. This fray has gotten worse with the rise of social media, being able that we're all able to share in this trauma as it goes viral, and we're able to experience this collective grief and outrage in real time. And typically, a lot of these atrocities happen to marginalized communities. So, our goal with this show is to ask ourselves, like, what can we do in order to help these groups? What can we do to educate ourselves and to help perpetuate what we are learning, right? So our goal is to restitch the tapestry through conversation, creativity, and action, and ultimately education. Okay. So, anti-intellectualism. Ari, if like, how would you define what anti-intellectualism is?
Well, anti-intellectualism to me is like it's anti-science to me, but it's also like it's just a movement that goes against like scientific progress.
Mm-hmm.
It basically, like, there'll be scientific advancements and there'll be like scientific movements that go, hey, I have this idea, or I have this scientific advancement that I have discovered, or have theorized, that I have spent time and a lot of patience and practice working on, and I have, you know, seen in the world around us, and I have and other scientists have seen and cataloged and have gone through the scientific method of cataloging and theorizing. And theorizing is not in the sense of like, this is just a theory. It's more of a, this is something that they have cataloged and tried and tested and proven, like gone through over and over again to theorize.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so uh, and so they've gone through and they've tested this, and there's a group of people, or a person that goes, you know what? No, not so much.
That, like, yeah, in a nutshell. Well, and it's interesting because my understanding also of anti-intellectualism is like anti-intellectualists typically view, if we were to use intellectualism as a term, of course, view intellectualism as being like this structure, this establishment that's, you know, robbing people of traditions and preventing them from uh embracing tradition. And I really think that a lot of that is kind of fear mongering in a way, um, because some of these people who are really connected to tradition feel that intellectualism is outright trying to disempower their right to their traditions, if that makes sense.
I feel like there's also a sense that it's rooted in religion too, that it's
Hmm.
like it's science versus religion again. That it's
Hmm.
like, if you follow these new scientific discoveries, that it goes against their religious traditions. So it's sort of like, anti-intellectualism is sort of like anti-religion, and
Right.
so there's sort of like a push and pull of like, am I, if I follow this, I'm going to be turning my back on my religion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It all comes back down to like that dichotomy of um like who is right and who is wrong. Like there can only be space for one, not both. At least that's what anti-intellectual, like people who are anti-intellectuals kind of seem to perceive. At least that's my understanding of it. Which, like, to me is a little bit concerning, but so like if we're to look at the history of anti-intellectualism,
So,
where would you argue that kind of began?
well, I don't know. It certainly began with Nicholas Copernicus, but I definitely want to start there. Um,
Yeah, so we like there are some good examples of it. So Copernicus.
Copernicus definitely discovered the fact that, like, we were in a heliocentric universe, and that the Earth moved around the sun instead of the Earth being the center of the universe, which was considered to be kind of canon for a long time because of religious tradition and just they astronomers definitely tried various and very convoluted ways to try to make that work through like these star patterns and just like stars that would go backwards and forwards and back again, and it didn't make sense. And Copernicus was like, well, what if the sun was the main star and we just go around it? And it caused a big upheaval, which was the kind of anti-intellectualism, like, well, what if you're wrong? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it caused a lot of controversy, and like it just was sort of like he needed to be like shown, like they were kind of like trying to put him in his place that like you're wrong, and he was like, but like I have all the science to back me up that like I know what I'm talking about. And he was persecuted for so long, and he later was proven right. I mean, but
Didn't he die as well? Like, wasn't he killed for um sharing his notion of us being in a heliocentric universe? Like, I remember there was one specific scientist who,
no, he died at the age of 70.
I must be thinking of someone else then.
You're thinking maybe Galileo?
Oh, yeah. I'm fairly sure that's also an example of anti-intellectualism. Like, whenever
Yeah.
one of the scientists would present something that really kind of unearthed the structures holding up religion, it was considered a threat, and a lot of scientists would often face life-threatening, dangerous situations because of that, which is kind of scary. Like, I cannot imagine being in one of those individuals' shoes, having to have that pressure, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I just, I feel like when we have, it seems like whenever we have advancements throughout history, it's sort of like the church goes, are you sure? I feel like the only time that, like, whenever there's been a scientific advancement, it's like it has to be so small or so innocuous, the church has to go, well, this doesn't matter, so I guess it's okay. Like the pea pods genetics were like so small and they were done by a priest that the church was like, I guess we'll let that slide. And like that's why it's taught by every school ever, because it has such major like influence, but like it's so small and so innocuous that like it
Right. It doesn't threaten a creation story, or it doesn't necessarily threaten um, how the human body is perceived and its function, right?
right.
So that
Because it's
makes
like
it
you take
acceptable.
it's like you pour one glass into another glass and like you get the genetics for the third child, and it's like, yeah, but I mean it's more convoluted than that, and like
It's a little bit more involved, let's just
right,
say.
and it's like,
Eh,
I mean, like, okay, so I mean, but like, I mean, can we learn more than just the genetics of our parents? Can we learn like some really like in school, when you learn science, like didn't you feel like you kind of missed out on stuff because it's like they only taught like the simple biology stuff and they didn't teach you like the real hardcore science stuff, and it's like
well,
I felt
well,
like
and
they couldn't teach you the hardcore science stuff.
well, if we think of like disciplines like archaeology and paleontology, right? Like both of those may have been touched on, but they weren't like really delved into, especially the archaeological part of it, because that really focused a lot more on like human evolution. so on and so forth. And like obviously there are a lot of anti-intellectualists who take significant issue with evolution. So like that became kind of a threat, right? I mean, and I know that I mean, we're probably going to talk about Darwin here in a minute, but like even Darwin faced, his own, perils because of his area of study and what he was revealing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but I do sometimes feel like I missed out, and I mean, at least in high school, like when college came around, like I felt like there was a little bit more
I barely took
openness.
science in college too because it wasn't required for my major. So like I I took some classes, but it was just kind of a rehash of what I learned in high school. So it was sort of like basically the same round of the same things again.
Yeah, I wouldn't have needed science had I not, because I ended up double majoring in anthropology. So I had to take um, an archaeology class. I had to take a physical anthropology class, which was kind of like anatomy and physiology, but more so focused on like how the human bone structure has changed over the period of thousands of years, right? But of course, that would like anti-intellectualists would really take issue with that. And
That's why I'm so hungry for science these days. Like I just study Stephen Hawking in my free time and read up on the physics of time and like I don't know.
I
I
love
just
it. I love it.
yes.
So, like, I mean, moving back toward Darwinism, like, I mean, evolution to this day, the theory of natural selection, all of those, they're still heavily criticized by very
Yeah.
specific groups of people, right?
Well, it started with like the Scopes trial. They put somebody on trial for teaching evolution in the classroom. And I, do you know about the Scopes trial?
I know a little bit about it.
So it was the state of Tennessee versus John Thomas Scopes. They call it the Scopes monkey trial. It was a legal case in 1925. Um, he was accused of violating the Tennessee Butler Act, which had made it unlawful to teach human evolution in a state funded school. Um, the trial is deliberately staged in order to attract publicly to the small of Dayton, Tennessee. Um, so
It was meant to be a spectacle.
he basically, yeah, he was found guilty and fined $100, which was equivalent to $1,500 today. But the verdict was overturned on a technicality. So basically, he was found guilty for teaching evolution, but
Wow.
was like, oh yeah,
Well, and we're going to talk a little bit more at length here about like education and the threats that education typically face from anti-intellectualism. But like, I would argue that that is a very like, when did you say that happened?
1925.
So like, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, historically speaking, that's pretty contemporary, right? Like that's
That's a
like,
hundred years ago.
it's 100 years ago, but like arguably, like I'm trying to think of when evolution started to be widely taught.
Like evolution was widely taught. It started to be taught about 100 and because Darwin did his stuff in like 1800s,
Hmm.
so it was
Okay, so
started to be taught about the 1900s.
okay, so I guess that wouldn't necessarily be contemporary. Like I feel like contemporary would be like in the last 50 years or so. So, but yeah, like that, like I guess that would like act as one of the first like formal example where legality was involved and used as a weapon against education. because of anti-intellectualism, right? So,
Right.
but
But yeah, it's just like I just can't believe that he was put on trial for something that he taught in a classroom. I mean, that's just like it blows my mind. Like, could you imagine today, like putting a teacher on trial for something that they taught, like
mhm.
in a classroom? Like,
Especially if it's in their
think about it.
area
Think
or their
about it.
discipline.
Like a science classroom, like somebody teaching STEM gets put on trial for teaching STEM. Like it just blows my mind. Like an astronomy teacher, like, well, there's a black hole that we just discovered, and they get put on trial for teaching that
Well, and if
because
we
somebody
think,
decides, well, uh, God tells me that like black holes don't exist. So I'm I'm not I don't believe in black holes, so obviously you're wrong. Like just like the very idea of putting on trial, like I it blows it mind boggling.
well, and what's really unsettling is something similar like that is happening now, with regard to the teaching of critical race theory. I'm sure you've probably seen that being discussed periodically, but the state of Texas, if memory serves me correctly, is attempting to ban the teaching of critical race theory.
What is critical race theory?
Critical race theory essentially is the teaching of like the different perspectives of marginalized groups and how those groups have different sets of experiences. Um, and the whole point of it is to help demonstrate that racism is systematic and to help people like look at how racism is a system, what feeds into it, what it feeds into ultimately, right, and its origins. So
So, like saying a black person who gets pulled over by police is going to have a different experience than a white person who gets pulled over by police.
exactly, yeah. So and then there are a lot of people who are very much against the teaching of critical race theory because a lot of people equate that to academia being this liberal institution attempting to, indoctrinate people and put, like kind of create like racial tension because of these conversations. And truthfully, they're just conversations about the fact that different groups of people have different perspectives, and we should think about that when we are, you know, working with groups of people. Like, so and earlier today I saw that who's the governor of Florida?
Jeb Bush? Is it
I
still
don't think
Jeb Bush or is
I
it
don't
someone else?
I don't think it's Jeb Bush. Governor of Florida is Ron DeSantis.
Oh, okay. I
He
guess Jeb hasn't been governor for a while.
oh, I know, like, it's hard to keep track of that stuff, but so Governor DeSantis and the Republican-run Florida state legislature are in the process of passing legislation where faculty and students, I think is it just attending higher education, have to make public their stances on political issues.
Wait, say that again?
They are passing legislation or trying to pass legislation. I haven't checked in on it. I don't know if it has successfully gone through, but they're trying to pass legislation where it requires faculty and students to make their political preferences or like their stances on things public or known.
Why is that necessary?
Probably because they are arguing that it's creating intellectual diversity in people being aware of like, well, is my professor going to be a liberal or a conservative professor?
That sounds like some 1984 stuff.
I know, right? I'm looking it up right now just to be sure, but yeah, like it's like this bill that's supposedly against indoctrination in colleges. It's been receiving a lot of like negative, lashback, obviously,
Yeah, why does it matter what your teachers
because it's
reading
very
this?
much it's connected to the fear mongering that a lot of people have had with regard to critical race theory too. So yeah, like it's
So just
unsettling.
because your staff is left leaning, that means that like, oh, they're indoctrinating you?
Well, yeah, like and the truth is like most teachers are not advertising what their political stances are necessarily. A lot of disciplines, expect them not to. So I don't know why, like to me, like I think it would be a breach of privacy even to expect that, right? Like
Leo, yes, your comments are showing up. We are reading them. Sorry
sorry,
about
we're
that.
just like hyper focused. Oh, let's see. Oh, I love this. Why is please stop treating other people badly considered indoctrination? Very excellent point. Yep. So that's just a kind of a contemporary example of anti-intellectualism and the fact that like anti-intellectualism is very much here. Like it's very much present. Like it's a pretty like powerful group of people who are suggesting that the systems behind educating are indoctrinating and perpetuating negativity, which to me sounds definitely like some 1984 shit.
Definitely. Either that or like some Fahrenheit 451 stuff where they're like, burn the books.
Right. Like, it's my goodness.
I don't know. I feel like we live in a dystopia right now as it is. Like, if it's not some like kind of, I feel like we live in like kind of like a Hunger Games, 1984, uh, what's another one? Brave New World type of
I
situation.
feel like we are sitting next to a dystopian pool, dipping our toes in and swishing them around, trying not to jump in, but dangerously being close to jumping in. That's a
No,
whole nother
I
topic.
feel like we're already there. See, like because I feel like with Brave New World, it's like I feel like people have really relaxed their views on like on like sex and like relationships, and like with 1984 I feel like people have like um don't care about tyranny and like dictatorships anymore, and I
Hmm.
feel like with with uh uh with Hunger Games, like we're all about like fashion and aesthetics, but like we don't care about like the fact that there are people in cages, like those types of things. Like I feel like yeah, we're just like kind of like this weird mix of like weird aesthetics and dictatorship and like
Hmm. No, I completely agree 100%.
it's just sort of like this weird monster world we all live in.
Do we want to talk about the Flat Earth Society for a moment?
The flat earth society is part of our dystopia.
So, like, where does the Flat Earth Society come from? Like, where does it
The flat earth
originate?
society originated from the UK. And the Flat Earth Society originated from English writer Samuel Rowbotham. He wrote a paper called the Zetic Astronomy and expanded it into a book called Earth is Not a Globe. Basically, he said that the Earth is a flat disk centered along the North Pole, and it's bounded along the southern edge by a wall of ice of Antarctica, and that the sun and the moon were 3,000 miles above the Earth, and that the cosmos were 3,100 miles above the Earth. And basically, he was like, so basically, we're a flat Earth. The poles are like walls, and that the sun is basically like circling above us 3,000 miles, and the sun and the moon are 3,100 miles above us, and that they're just circling around us. But modern English people, English opinions vary. Some think that the Earth is actually a diamond, or like diamond shaped, or like some think that it's like oval shaped, but not globe shaped. Some think that it's like, I don't know. They have various opinions, but like they don't think that it's actually disc shaped. They think it's like, but they think it's like not quite.
Not like spherical.
Oh, they tried to disprove. They tried to use the last solar eclipse to try to disprove uh that it was a flat Earth, and they failed.
How the heck did they try? How did that happen?
I don't know the exact experiment that they did, but they were like, see, this is a flat Earth because something like the observable science. They were like, it's gotta be a flat Earth, and they were proven wrong because of the curvature of the Earth. Always proves that the fact that like that there was a Netflix documentary called Behind the Curve, which basically like listened to their ideas and let them do an experiment. And here's the experiment. He used two boards, both with a hole at the height of 5.18 meters or 17 feet above water level, a camera, and another person by the name of Henrique holding a torch at the same height and aligned with the holes. If the earth was flat, no matter how far Henrique was, the light would come through the holes. But on the spherical earth, there's a curvature to consider. Given Henrique's distance from the holes, he would have to position the light above his head, 23 feet above the water level, for it to be seen. When the experiment began, the light didn't appear on the camera. This perplexed Jaron, and he radioed Henrique to confirm that the height of the light was 17 feet above the water level. On a flat earth, you should be seeing the light. Then he asked Henrique to lift the light above his head. Lo and behold, the light shined through. That's interesting, Jaron commented on the clip. You know what? It is interesting.
Oh my gosh. I literally can't even. I literally
That was from a
can't.
Netflix documentary. So he basically was disproved in his experiment.
That's really funny.
That's on Netflix if you want to watch it. It's called
What is it called again?
Behind the Curve.
I'm gonna have to watch it. Like, see, the thing is, like, there is so much proof that our planet is spherical, right? There's been photos of our planet taken from orbit, they're like at a distance, but of
But
course,
they say that those are fake, that the media is fake, that they're
yeah,
lying to you. I had my ex-boyfriend had a friend whose father um, raised him to believe that the earth was a globe, like circular. And then when he grew up, his father like told him that he was flat earther. So it literally was like he took like one of those globes and was like, no, it's fake. Like it's flat now. And like he didn't know how to deal with it. He didn't know how to deal with the fact that his father was like, it's flat. And like,
mhm.
how do you deal with like a family member that's like a flat earther now? And like he was trying to deal with the fact that his father didn't believe in science, and he was just like having such a hard time trying to have a relationship with his father because he was like, I mean, his whole life he grew up and his father taught him like this is how it was and this is science and like I believe in science, and now his father didn't believe in the science of things, and it was just like a total 180, and it was just blowing his mind.
Yeah. Like it's just it well, and the thing is, like, going back to talking about like the photographs and the science and stuff like that, like the reason why anti-intellectualists speak out against these things is because they view these things as indoctrinating establishments that do what they do to mislead people when really it's the opposite way around, right? Um, and anti-intellectualists don't really acknowledge peer review or the fact that there are large groups of people that agree on the same thing and kind of, you know, peer review each other's work in order to come to the same conclusion, right? So
Mhm.
like it's just a denial of that the solidarity that's even created through education or science or anything like that.
It's true, and it's like it's it's just like I'm not saying that they're stupid. I don't think that they're stupid. That's not the problem. I
Mm-hmm.
just want to say that like I just don't think that like I just want I just think that they're clinging to a belief that's like they want it to be true so bad that they'll throw out any information that doesn't cling to their beliefs.
Yeah, like because at that point it's so easy to rationalize that something is inaccurate that they don't need any basis for it to be inaccurate. It just is. And to me, like it just comes down to conditioning, right? Like people who view these establishments this way are probably taught this by family or by the people that they are surrounded with, and due to that personalization of it, like it becomes almost, I don't know, like overwhelming for them in a way, like to the point where like there's it's just tunnel vision in a way.
It I want them to like I don't know how to like I just want them to like see that like it's not that one side is better than the other. It's just that one side has gone through the scientific method and tested it over and over again using tried and true methods of like actual science, of like provable science, and like
Not to
and
mention peer reviewing it, like collaborating, having other professionals who may have like different focuses or different priorities, like coming in and, creating that solidarity, finding where the flaws are, providing criticism. Like that whole process is in place to help us invest some sense of trust in what is being done, to suggest that these things, we're all agreeing on this. This is the way this is because we went through these different processes to come to this determination.
I mean, the fact that like the curvature of the Earth goes back to the ancient Greeks when they decided that the Earth was round. They had done a study, like they had seen the Earth off the horizon, and they had done mathematics to prove that the Earth was round back during the time of the Greeks. Like, I mean, and it had been proven time and again that the Earth is round. I mean, it just, I just, I just, it doesn't, it boggles my mind. I just don't, I, maybe I'm just foolish to think like I'm trying to see the perspective and like I want to see their perspective of like how they understand it and like I see the experiments they do and like I can see how they might understand that, but like from my perspective I don't see the science
Hmm.
as being like good science, and like I just don't see it as being like when I see the science of what they do, I just it's so convoluted and it's so it just doesn't add
It
up and make
proves
sense to
itself
me.
wrong, just like that example that you illustrated, right? Like it
Sometimes
works
it
against
does.
itself.
Sometimes I've seen experiments that they've done that it's like observable science that you can see with your eye. Like they take a level on a plane, and so the plane goes flat, and it's like, well, the level's flat on a plane. And it's like, well, yeah, and it's like that proves that it's like that you're on a flat Earth because it's flat on a plane. And it's like, well, of course it's going to be flat on a plane because you're cruising at 30,000 or something like that. I think that was one of them, and I was like, well, of course you're cruising at 30,000 feet, but I was just like, it's stuff like that. I was like, it's just observable. Like, I mean, like you can go like this, like, I mean, like. The plane goes like this and it goes up and then it moves and then you go back down and then it goes level. Like, I mean,
Leo makes a good point here about that peer review stuff. Like they probably are seeing it as a false dichotomy because they think peer-reviewed studies are just confirmation biases, but on a larger scale. Yeah, so they like, I mean, there is even a rationalization that um discounts each segment of like the things that prove, you know. So let's talk about, I mean, we're kind of veering a little bit more into education here as well, right? So let's talk about the movement that there is to drop out of school. So like, oh, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, currently there is a movement where education, like, because obviously, and we've talked about this many times on our show, the fact that education in many ways is being devalued, right? And a lot of that is being painted as though, like universities and colleges are kind of turning into businesses where profit becomes a greater priority in some instances than the actual education. And of course that's kind of like feeding into that anti-intellectualism of like, well, these are big institutions just wanting nothing but to, you know, make money off from people and kind of like churn out what they want, kind of like an assembly line, right? So that's kind of definitely discouraged a lot of people, and I think fed into anti-intellectualism considerably. Now, don't get me wrong, like I also think that there's been more like awareness about like trade schools and other modes of education that are like meaningful, that can, you know, educate people, produce certifications, get them prepared for specific
And
careers.
not to knock on those are definitely legitimate too. I think that those are definitely valid and that they should be pursued as a career if you want to make money that way. Um,
Right.
but I think that like you should still try to enrich your mind in some way. Um, and I think I have a question on there of is studying on your own valid?
I think studying on your own is valid so long as you are studying reputable, peer-reviewed um, resources and materials, right? Because the truth is, I personally don't think school has to be a route that everyone takes. In fact, a lot of anti-intellectualists and other groups of people too would argue that school is classist and a whole, you know, variety of other modes of discrimination as well, right? So like I think there is some validity in those arguments, but like if one were to like self-study and like you were saying, enrich oneself, like I would think that it would need to be through like the channels that are considered reputable, right? Except now we have like this current issue where what's reputable is being easily gaslit into being, well, is it reputable or is it indoctrination?
True. But you know, it's hard to find the way if you're in the dark. Like reading peer review articles, like do you like understanding the articles and like going through and like
Well, like
trying to
research,
digest them and
yeah. Well, like okay, so my understanding is that when a person is self-enriching, like their immediate first step is by listening to the people around them and kind of gleaning what they want based on what they hear from other people in their immediate circle. And I think that's the step where a lot of people often get stuck because they get really caught up and invested in what the immediate people in their circle believe on things that like it almost is easily justifiable to not go out and look at other commentary or conversation about certain topics, right? So like
mhm.
at that, like that's kind of where it stalls and doesn't continue its momentum, if that makes sense.
It's true. You need to find people to talk to about your stuff too. I think that like having discussions about what you're talking about and like finding people to talk to about it either on message boards or something and like getting out
Right.
there.
Yeah. Like for example, I think it also requires an open mind. Like obviously I am definitely a liberal person, but even if somebody disagrees with me, like I feel like have the capability of listening and trying to see things from another person's perspective. Like there are, and I know you're very much the same way as well. Like there are a lot of groups of people though who outright refuse to even listen, right? Um, like, and for me, I mean, I think we all have our own criteria why we might in a situation not listen to something being said, right? Like for me, like if it involves like the marginalization or the um infliction of atrocities on groups of people, like if marginalized groups of people especially, like to me that is like a situation where like no, that is inexcusable. There's nothing that can justify that.
I've gotten better at listening to the other side in the past. Well, because it's been shoved down my throat, but in the past 4 years.
I was gonna say 4 years. It's true though. Like, well, and the thing is, like, I think a lot of people are gaslit. Gaslight's my theme of the evening. A lot of people are gaslit into thinking that they are unreasonable by the opposing perspective. And I'm sure this happens on both sides of a given argument. But I know that there's specific sides that do it more so. And we are kind of like forced to demonstrate our diplomacy by listening. And I think listening again, like it is a very diplomatic act, and I think that it's very important that people do. But like if one person's going to listen, that also means the other person has to listen too. Like it's symbiotic. It's at least it's meant to be symbiotic.
It's true. And TERFs are big time anti-intellectuals.
Yes, agreed completely, Leo. So, like, obviously, like, I'm glad that you mentioned the last 4 years because, like, if we look at education as well, like, anti-intellectualism has really kind of influenced like, kind of like the degrade of education or the devaluing of education because a lot of the divisive politics over the past 4 years, the divisive politics where, like, people in specific careers who have dedicated years and years of their lives to, like, specific vocations are being deemed as unreliable. Like, I mean, let's think of Dr. Fauci, for example, one of the nation's leading experts on disease and the
Mhm.
spread of disease being painted on national television by leaders as being unreliable or politically influenced simply because he was expressing something that certain groups of people did not want to hear. So like immediately, instead of like investigating it on their own, like their first instinct was like, well, let's eviscerate this person's character and their history and their education to make them seem like they are not reliable, right?
Yeah,
Which is really like, I think it's very unsettling that it could like that there are people with that level of social power where they can do that to someone,
that's true.
right?
Hmm.
And and we've also noticed over the past 4 years that there has been this glorification of the conspiracy theory, right? And unfortunately,
So
like
many conspiracy
oh
theories.
yeah, like, and I think social media, like obviously social media is meant to be a vehicle for people to openly discuss things. Like it's obviously been a space where a lot of that has been cultivated, right? And I know like some social media outlets have tried their best to kind of um, keep an eye on that type of thing, successfully so or not. Like it's like a lot of people also deem that like um, inhibiting freedom of speech as well. But um, weaponizing religion against education as well, and we talked about that a little while ago too, how like for example, like there are certain religious groups who refuse to be exposed to like any conversations about LGBTQ plus people or evolution because it goes against their religious beliefs, right? And of course like everybody has the freedom of religion, but when it gets to the point where like that's being used as a weapon to you know force educators and students to reveal what their political stances are on things like that, that's
It's dangerous.
weaponizing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's weaponizing.
Hmm.
And then, of course, last but not least, the pandemic has also added a lot of, complication and has kind of fueled intellectualism because a lot of people kind of feed into those conspiracy theories.
Well, and
And
people just stopped going to school during the pandemic because they were like, what's the point?
right.
Going to the classroom, it's not, it's not worth it to go during this time. I'm just not going to go back.
Well, and like there like and I actually saw this like on like several news programs today. They were talking about the teacher shortage that's currently happening right now. Like they are making a lot of predictions that by the time fall gets here, there's going to be a teacher shortage so bad that it's going to affect multiple states, because like during and before the pandemic there were like considerable retirements taking place, like large numbers of retirements, but there are fewer people going into teaching because of course the commercialization of education, because of the devaluing of education. And if we like I mean if we look back on the pandemic, and we like of course we saw a lot of language about frontline workers. A lot of people started acknowledging the fact that retail workers, fast food workers, medical workers, other frontline workers, they were considered significant, right? Because they were helping us like stay sustained in the middle of a pandemic. But very seldom were teachers included in that at all. In fact, teachers were often heavily criticized for even expressing their concern over exposure or their concern for their students or lack of resources. So, like, again, it comes back down to the fact that, like, in our culture specifically, there are different areas, like different careers that have been devalued. And I think
Teachers
that
get the short end of the stick always.
yep, and I keep in mind, like I know, like I'm speaking from the perspective of a teacher here, but I see it often, and I've seen it happen to other teachers. Um, I have not read that book yet, but I really want to read that book. Motor User, Chasen Buttigieg's book. Yeah, I've heard really good things about it. Um, but like It just showcases the fact that intellectualism has kind of gained steam in certain ways, and I think the pandemic has made it convenient for that to grow. And I think that that is something that we should be concerned about and something that we should talk about, right? So I am off my little rant.
It was a good rant.
Oh, thank you. So, do we have any discussion questions we want to finish off on tonight?
Um, are you curious?
In general, yes, I would say so. You mean like just curious about like the happenings in the world?
Yeah, like do you think that curiosity fuels intellectualism?
I think so. I really think that, like, personally, I often think about like the perspectives of other groups of people, what they experience, what they endure, like what they bring to the table, so on and so forth, right? Based on their stories. Um, Now, it doesn't only intrigue me, but to me, it's also like significant in cultivating mutual respect between groups of people. What about you?
Um, I'm curious about a lot of different things. I'm curious about science, the arts, uh, happenings in the world. I watch the news because I think the news is important, and I think that for the changing times, I think it's good to keep up with happenings in the world.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like not a lot has been happening lately, though. I feel like um, or they're just not reporting on it, or I feel like there's just not a lot of big things happening, but a lot of small things happening.
Well, we
Like,
also have to realize that we have just come off from 4 years of a cataclysmic thing happening like every other day, or
yeah, I feel like I'm not getting the
or like something absolutely like mind-numbing is being
I
said
feel
like
like my
every other day.
adrenaline's not going. I'm like I'm like a little bit like I feel like a little bit like yeah, like I've got like no sugar rush. I'm like I'm
Yes.
like things are back to normal. How do I feel about this? I need a cup of coffee or something.
So, like, another interesting question, do you dream up ideas? Do you think about things in a new way? And is that part of intellectualism too? So, is innovation part of intellectualism? I would
I
say
think
yes.
so.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, the truth is, like, part of being human is being able to categorize things, observe processes, and find efficient ways of doing things, right? Or, different ways of expressing oneself. Like, I think that's definitely part of intellectualism because we all have the freedom of doing that, and we all have the capability of doing that.
Yeah. Um, so in my journal that I keep up with, I write down 6 ideas every day of things that I wish were in the world or things that would change with the world.
Oh my God, I love that.
So do you want to hear one of the things that I came up with?
Yeah.
So even though I was told by my friend Kevin that they actually came up with something else, and I'll come up tell you what they came up with as something else. I came up with a shoe that you wear, and it's for blind people or people who don't want to hold their phones when they use Google Maps. Um, that gives you it moves to show you which way to go. So like it raises and moves. So like you to show you which direction. So like it moves up, like when you have to go uphill, or like it moves slightly to the right when you have to turn right, or it goes to the left when you have to go left, like to show you
Hmm.
which direction you have to go, and it's in your shoes.
So it's like kind of tactile.
It's tactile, yes.
That is so cool.
but yeah, and it's in your, so like, and it takes into account street lights, and it takes into account, and like when there's like interesting stops, like places of interest, it'll buzz or like vibrate.
I love it. That is a really cool idea.
But apparently they came up with something that was even better for blind people. They came up with something that you put on your tongue, and it
Hmm.
helps you see. And it
Really?
was
This sounds kind of familiar.
and it was it you basically put it on your tongue, and it's a camera, and it helps you see things, and like you actually can see with your tongue, and it helps you like move around, and like they were testing it by catching a ball,
Oh, okay.
and like they actually were like able to like manipulate seeing a ball, and like it helped blind people see.
See, this is why intellectualism and creative innovation is so important because we're able to like make advances and help groups of people.
I just thought that was really amazing that they used a camera
I think that's
on the
super
tongue
amazing.
of all places. Who would think on the tongue?
That would be like the last place that I would think. So is education and studying, does it have to be done in a formal environment or can it be done in a non-formal setting and still be considered valid? I know we've kind of touched on this one a little bit, but what do you think?
I think that you can do it informally. I think it is a little bit harder because you're without guidance. So you have to be motivated,
Hmm.
and you have to set a schedule for yourself, and you have to want it. But I think that it's possible.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. And I think it's significant also to like circulate back and understand that the reason why like even people independently can learn is because there were people before who, you know, came together and found solidarity and agreed on various significant aspects of different subjects, right? Like, but like, and I think that's like the central aspect of intellectualism, the fact that everyone is building on what each other's learning,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, yeah. Well, Ari, my friend, do you have any parting words for this evening?
Um, Find something that interests you, be curious, and study.
Love it. Create something, learn something new, and don't be afraid to do it. And of course, like, don't be afraid to listen to other perspectives too. All right, dear friends. Well, thank you again for tuning in. And again, thank you for being so understanding with us switching to a new night to do this. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next Thursday. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.